Hola Lima! How are you? Good afternoon. So I have been really studying my Spanish. So here it goes. Mi gato comió mi perro. I think that means good afternoon. Well, how about the football team? Right? Woo! After 36 years, they not only qualified, but they came in third place in the World Cup. You know, when Coach Ricardo Gareca joined in 2015, he wanted to do more than just transform Peru's football team. He wanted to change mindsets. Peru is one of the oldest civilizations in the world. Dating back 9,000 BC. From the Mochica, Chimu to the Incas. They created some of the most advanced technologies before its time. From the Andes to the Amazon, Peru's greatest asset is its diversity. Over 21,000 species of plants and animal life. They export large amounts of mining, agriculture, textile, and fishing. I mean, truly, God has blessed Peru with its natural resources. Peru is one of the most prosperous economies in the South American region. In the last 10 years, the GDP has almost doubled. And Peru's average growth is about 6% and has one of the fastest growing industrial growth rate of 10%, outpacing other Latin American countries, OECD, and the world's average. So yeah, you guys are doing pretty well. Peru is also very high in terms of economic freedom and social freedom. It is an APEC nation, part of the World Trade Organization, and is working towards becoming a full member of OECD. And again, you can see that relative to Latin America and the world average, Peru is doing quite well. Peru is the single largest producer of a single species, anchovies. Raise your hand if you love anchovies. And Peru also has large reserves of ore and hydrocarbon. And it is the largest producer of gold in Latin America and the third largest producer of copper in all of the world. Peru's diversity and its climate is unrivaled, and hence it produces some of the best agricultures in the world, such as asparagus, maize, rice, coffee. And it's also producing about half of the world's supply of quinoa. Speaking of eating well, since coming to Peru, I've already gained weight. Peruvian textiles uses ancient, sustainable techniques to produce some of the most vibrant materials in the world. That is amazing and so beautiful. And Peru's literacy rate is at 93% as of 2007. And Peru is working, and I know we're going to be talking about this on the panel, but it is working towards fighting corruption. trying to foster greater transparency. Matter of fact, they signed recently the OECD Convention on Anti-Bribery, as well as tax treaties to reduce tax avoidance by large multinationals. Over the last several decades, Peru has really done some incredible work with positive reformation to reduce the poverty rate from 60% to just 21.7% as of last year. But there's still more work ahead, clearly. And when it comes to productivity, this might be Peru's one of the greatest opportunities to improve. Relative to developed OECD nations, Peru's productivity on a GDP per capita is low. How about investment R&D? Research and development is key to driving productivity and to ensure that the overall growth of GDP increases. But as you can see, relative to even Latin America, Peru's investment in R&D is low. There was a recent report that came out from the United Nations that indicated that in the next 10 to 12 years, that the global temperature will rise by another 1.5 Celsius, which doesn't seem like a very big number, but will create unimaginable havoc. In the United States, we already have 3 or 4 hurricanes just this season, and there's one right now in the Hawaii South Pacific region. It is going to create unimaginable droughts, heat wave, floods, devastation, and massive global poverty. Peru is highly vulnerable to environmental changes because it has a direct impact on the economic dependence on natural resources. And Peru's biodiversity is already under great pressure, and it's going to get only worse. Over the last 90 years, this factory in La Roya has been spewing out heavy toxic metals into the air. The Quinoa River in Quinoa is filled with garbage, including medical waste, and it has contaminated the water system. And that in turn has contaminated the crops, the animals, and it's made the people sick. Over the last several decades, there has been decline in deforestation, which is very positive. However, there is still active deforestation and change in land use that is continuing to emit and contribute to global emissions. In just 1 year, from 2015 to 2016, there was a loss of 1,600 acres of rainforest gone. How can Peru lead the fourth industrial revolution and achieve United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Let me give you some benchmarks. What you're seeing here is Singapore's plan called 2025 Master Plan. And Singapore wants to become a vibrant, smart, sustainable city-state where they can create ample, great paying jobs, sustainable businesses, and innovative new industries. This chart is a ranking of sustainable cities by IESC. And what's interesting is, if you look at it very closely, behind this matrix, there is statistical correlation. There is a high correlation between sustainability with high economic output, high human capital, better social cohesion, better environments, better transportation and technology. And what you're seeing here is Peru at number 131. That is an opportunity. I want to share with you a couple of use cases on renewable energy and what some of these countries and firms are doing to increase their competitiveness while still addressing the sustainability. What you're seeing here is Pont Baldy. It's a hydropower plant in the south of France. And what GE is doing is they're using the Internet of Things enabled intelligent monitoring system to be able to continuously and constantly check on the health of this hydropower plant, and to be able to identify and to prevent potential failures before it happens. On a monthly basis, their data amasses 2 terabytes per each month, and they use those analysis to increase their uptime by 1%, which sounds small. But remember, this is a major hydropower plant, just like the one you have, that produces some 40-50% of your energy source. That 1% is significant. And the fact that you can detect problems before it becomes something that shuts it down, that's valuable. Siemens is using its neural network-enabled artificial intelligence on its gas turbines. You see, the AI system is continuously monitoring the performance and the processes and the controls of the gas turbines. And one of the main objectives of the AI system is to reduce the emission of nitrogen oxides. Their AI system is about 30 years generation. And they've been developing it for the last several decades. It's incredible. And they have implemented it all over the world in about 30 steel factories to improve their processes and their efficiencies. Another popular trend in renewable energy and manufacturing is something called a digital twin. Digital twin is a digital representation of that physical assets. You see, there are sensors on those systems, and those sensors send data, and the digital twin provides a visual way to see what your asset's doing and what the data is providing on a real-time basis. Not only is it great for performance, but what it's doing is it's also used for modeling, to improve the design, to improve the performance and the operation, in this case, of a turbine. I want to share with you how others are using technology to increase the outputs and the efficiency and the sustainability as it relates to agriculture. On a very large-scale farm, how do you systematically monitor remote regions like the mountainous areas we have in Peru? to be able to automatically know what the weather conditions and how it's affecting your crop, and the potential for disease and pest. Well, in Colombia, they wanted to increase banana crop production. You see, banana is highly sensitive to change in temperature. When there is a drop in temperature, the oxygen level in the soil also drops. And that increases the chances of fungus and disease, and ultimately reduction in crop yield. What they wanted to do was they wanted to use IoT, Internet of Things, to be able to create a new variety or varieties of banana that can be less temperature dependent. So what they did was they instituted the Internet of Things. And you can see the various sensors throughout the farm, throughout the remote regions, that was measuring everything from humidity, temperature, soil conditions, to even the diameter of the trunk of the tree, to the diameter of the size of the fruit, to even solar radiation. And when you have all this data, and this data is coming to you almost real time, you get some pretty great insights. They're able to use these analytics to be able to optimize and to forecast out their harvest. They're able to ensure they're using the minimal amount of water necessary to have high yield. They're able to prevent disease before it gets widespread. And lastly, to be able to reduce fertilizer and pesticide. This is a startup called Farmer's Edge. And they're trying to give farmers an eagle's view of the entire farm in a snapshot. They're using satellite imagery, Internet of Things sensors, and soil sampling technology to be able to help farmers identify and to manage their farmland systematically. Their satellite imagery, as you can see, gives them a visual instance of where there's potential issues of fertilization, potential issues of disease, moisture issues. And this technology is being used right now in Brazil, in Eastern Europe, the US, Canada, and Australia. Another startup called Concentric is focused on something called microbial consortia. It is using a combination of bacteria and fungi to be able to increase the crop yield while reducing the use of pesticide and fertilizers. And this is so progressive. It is raised over $64 million and has a backing of some of the biggest VCs. Triple bottom line means that when we start to address environmental needs, economic prosperity, and social issues, we start to truly achieve sustainability. I want to share with you several case studies of sustainability at work right now. Raise your hand if you knew that Sweden recycles almost 100% of their household waste. Did you know that? 100%. You can see that the recycling has grown tremendously over the years. But what's really fascinating is that they're burning 3 times more waste. But they're reducing the heavy metal pollution by 99% since 1985. That is astounding. Plastic to Oil is a clean energy company and is churning plastic that is sitting in those rivers, in the oceans, in your water system, and churning it into diesel fuel, naphtha, and heating oil. If you look at this map, you see right here, these red regions, red, orange, yellowish regions. What it's showing is that Peru is under great pressure, where their fresh water source is drying up. Israel is tackling their fresh water shortage through desalination. They have the largest, cheapest reverse osmosis desalination plant in the world. And it provides 20% of their drinking water. They're able to make fresh water from the sea cheaply at a scale that has never been achieved before. It's easy to believe that technology will solve all your problems. However, digital success isn't just about technology. Large vendors will have you believe that a smart city is about smart meters and lights and smart garbage cans. Raise your hand if you think that the way to solve Peru's problem is through smart lights and smart meters. Anybody? Okay, one person. The answer is it's going to take a lot more than just a few smart meters. 51% of businesses in Peru are informal businesses, and they do not pay taxes for several reasons. One is because they don't want to have to pay the tax or the surcharge on the salaries of the employees. Two is the fact that it's a bureaucratic process to get new businesses set up. And third is an issue of trust, or the lack thereof, in the system. What you're seeing here in this chart is that generally, the lower the tax rate, the higher the result in terms of human development and higher tax revenues. And as a general good policy, if you can have reasonably competitive, relatively low tax rates, it actually encourages the creation of the private sector. And it provides a way to develop a tax-compliant culture. According to the World Bank, higher tax compliance is very important. You see, when small informal businesses don't pay taxes, it discourages the large formal businesses from paying taxes because they think it's unfair. But there's more. We also need to make sure that the cost or the tax administrative burden becomes less and less and cheaper. A study of 118 countries indicated that when you are able to decrease the cost of tax administrative burden by 10%, it led to a rise of 3% in new business entry rates. This is real, folks. This is what's working. Let's talk about innovation. After all, the way Peru can move up the value-add curve and to ensure economic prosperity into the future is through innovation. But how do you do that? Well, again, we look to Israel for our next case study. Israel is also known as the startup nation. And it has the highest density of startups relative to any country in the world. So the question is, what's behind their startup success? Well, since I don't have that much time with you today, I'm just going to give you two determinants for brevity. One is government support, and second is military service. On the government support, it is central to the viability of these startups. Did you know that most of the tax revenue for Israel comes from the exits, the M&As of startups? They are incented to support them to the extent that they will give startups up to $700,000 in USD to startup. No equity, no repayments, no strings attached. You see, they recognize that the government has to play an active role in the riskiest investment class, which are the early stage. That allows for a follow-up by the private sector capital. The second reason is military service. You see, they have very elite divisions, such as a Unit 8200, which is their cybersecurity unit. And they recruit some of the best and the brightest programmers and hackers. So when people say Israel's military is mighty, they're physical assets, yes, but it's really their cybersecurity and their digital units that's superior. And that has prevented them and others from potentially attacking that nation. When this special unit of programmers and hackers come out, they are in incredibly high demand. And many of them are just essentially recruited by high-tech companies, but many of them go into entrepreneurship to fuel the startup ecosystem. Some of you may think that innovation is about collection of new buildings, or in some cases, megacities. Well, what I can tell you from my world travels is that I have witnessed with my eyes firsthand that the most successful projects are the ones that started with sustainable economic development, not shiny new buildings. For our next case study, let me take you to India. This is Mukesh Ambani. He is the older brother of the Reliance Group. He invested $22 billion to create India's largest fiber optics network. And he created that sustainable economic development by taking the cash from his oil refinery business to support and to inject this new business line. As of 2016 launch, since then, they have amassed 215 million subscribers to date. And Mukesh is aiming to capture 90% of India's market share. And by the way, I don't know if you know this story, his business, Reliance Jio, effectively destroyed his younger brother's Reliance Telco business. And guess who bought the assets of the Reliance Telco? His older brother. You see, Peru's distinctive comparative advantage, and let me define comparative advantage. It's not about absolutes, but it's about relative advantage vis-a-vis other nations. Peru's comparative advantage is in its biodiversity. Just in potatoes alone, 3,000 varieties. And it produces some of the finest cotton and coffee all over the world. You see, the key to sustainable economic development has to be about which industrial development project is going to generate cash flow the fastest and substantially grow into the future to secure the economic prosperity of Peru. You see, I and many others that's going to come on stage can share with you great insights and best practices. And we can say it until our faces turn blue. But unless this results in change, we fail. Part of the reason I wrote this book is because I realized that it's not more technology that cities and countries need, but it's a shift in mindset. You see, if you want success, if you want more change, more growth, it starts with a mindset change. It's when we do the things that's most uncomfortable as individuals, as communities, and as a nation, only then can we begin to have real, lasting, sustainable change. Here's what Tony Robbins says: strive, pushing through our limits, doing the hard thing, focusing on constant and never-ending growth and improvement is the ticket to impact and fulfillment. I want to wrap up with this story of this inventor who was born in 1874, born in Arequipa, Peru. And many of you may not know who he is, Paulette. But when he was a child, he was fascinated by rockets, and he loved fireworks at parties. 123 years ago, he was the first person in the world to develop liquid fuel rocket engine, as well as a modern rocket propulsion system. And what's so interesting about this man is, back then, most countries and scientists were just trying to solve the basic aviation problem. And here he is, thinking about space travel. Most of us want to hold on to our status quo, but Paulette questioned all the assumptions, challenged them. There are many naysayers. They will tell you, it's impossible. Who do you think you are? You can't do that. And that's what they said about SpaceX. And that's what they said about Peru's football. But yet, not only made it to the qualify for the World Cup, but they came in third place in the world. You see, there are many, including some of us, that says, we can't do it. But here's a secret that I want to share with you. Peru is a winner. Peru has overcome some of the greatest political, social, and economic challenges to rise as one of the top South American countries. And I recognize that it's still work in progress, and that's okay, as long as we're progressing. Peru is also one of the oldest civilizations that developed some of the most advanced technologies before its time. So if you ask me, yes, Peru can in fact lead the fourth industrial revolution. Are you with me? We can once again show the world that the underdog can come out on top. Thank you.